Welcome to the Flowerlounge, a place for conversations with wildly creative people and a little plant-loving wisdom to help you experience life in full bloom. I'm Katie Hess, flower alchemist and founder of Lotus Way, and I believe in a world where we're all living at our personal edge. Welcome to this week's episode of the Flowerlounge. It is our 6th MOONSHINE that we've done. Very excited to have Kristina Wingeier, intuitive astrologer, with us, as always, as we dive into the lunar cycle. And we just got, some fresh cups of coffee and water, and we've loaded them up with joy juice and turned the lights down. I had a light bulb that exploded. I'm sitting in the dark. So Kristina what did you do? You closed your blind?
I drew the shades just to be in the dark with you.
So, yeah, in essence of this fabulous eclipse season, we're sitting in the dark recording this podcast.
Happy eclipse season.
Happy eclipse season. We've arrived, Kristina.
We're here. We're here again.
The foreboding movie music the show is now beginning.
It began on Monday, on the 9th. Yes, we're here. So eclipse season, what does that even mean, right? Like, what is that? So it is a 6-week time frame that happens every 6 months. That's an easy way to remember it. And it happens when the sun gets within a certain distance from one of the nodes of the moon. What are these nodes of the moon, you might ask? These are points in space, actually, and they're an intersection point. From Earth, it looks like the sun travels around us, right? You could draw a line where the sun travels. That's called the ecliptic. That's the apparent path of the sun. And then simultaneously, the moon is orbiting around Earth at the same time. If you held those two orbits as they were like kind of oval-shaped hula hoops, and you intersected them and kind of, put them together and kind of tilted them, and those places where the two hoops lined up, those would be the nodes of the moon. So when a new moon or a full moon happens, when the sun is close to one of the nodes of the moon, it's going to be an eclipse.
And what does that mean for us, as people, as emotional beings, as humans, as a society, to have this bundle of eclipses every 6 months?
It's a time of intensified, things get a little more intense is what I would say. And eclipses happen on Earth. They're, especially solar eclipses, they're very interesting. They actually have families of solar eclipses. They are like 70 to 72 eclipses in a Saros cycle, which is the family of eclipses. And they begin at one end of the Earth at the pole, and they end at the other pole. So they move the light and the shadow across the globe in long arcs of time. So light, shadow, things are hidden, things are revealed, things begin, things end, often in very dramatic fashion. New moons and full moons are already times when people are feeling things more intensely because the moon is such a modulator of energy, being so close to the planet. And the eclipses are really like supercharged lunations. And so everything's just a little more dark or a little more bright in a sense.
Intensified,
yeah. Activated, yeah. But also it's also like a time where there's potential for tremendous growth when you work intentionally and consciously with what's arising. And so it can be a time of accelerated growth and transformation as well.
That sounds painful.
Some people think it is painful, and some people are transformation junkies. So it just depends. Yeah. I mean, hurt me some more. No.
So how many eclipses are there? And are they in moons or suns? coming up?
Yes. So there's this particular eclipse season, because eclipse season is beginning when the sun is kind of far away from one of those nodes. We're actually going to tuck in 3 eclipses for this eclipse season. It's going to start with a partial solar eclipse. There's going to be a total lunar eclipse in the middle. And then next lunar cycle, the new moon will again be a partial solar eclipse. And so the solar eclipses are not going to be these big visual phenomenons to watch. They're very partial. They're very close to the poles. Actually, it's not like that big eclipse of last August where it's a total solar eclipse. So, yeah.
If you're listening to this podcast in Antarctica, it's going to be amazing.
It'll be visible from Antarctica and the Indian Ocean, South Australia.
Okay.
Yeah. So 3, a trinity of eclipses this eclipse season.
Okay. And then I've also heard you say in our last podcast that this set or this little bundle of eclipses was part of a larger cycle that started in May of 2017. Is there anything you want to add? So we've got this little bundle that's together, and then we've got a bigger bundle that's together.
Exactly. So remember those funny things I talked about, the nodes of the moon, right? They are opposite each other, and they move through 2 signs that are opposite, and it takes them about 18 months to do so. So when we say May of 2017, that's when the nodes moved into Leo and Aquarius. And so the eclipses that happen during that 18 months, the majority of them are going to be eclipses in those signs. So that axis in your natal chart is getting activated over and over again. As a collective, we're seeing those themes over and over again and working kind of through them backwards, because the nodes do something interesting too. They enter into a sign at the end of the sign. So they enter in at like 29 degrees and they move their way to the beginning. So they move backwards through.
So it's unpacking and sort of like rewinding, going backwards. And we individually and collectively, we get these 18-month periods of big lessons, and they sort of
exactly
they sort of shift over every 18 months.
And so the big lessons for the North Node in Leo and the South Node in Aquarius is really that unifying of the mind and the heart, letting them work in harmony rather than being over-reliant on the mind or the brain, especially the thinking mind, without getting caught up in big, showy, dramatic emotional commotion of the heart, finding that balance really, and how we need to think about the individual in front of us. That's the Leo, the North Node in Leo, and that they're worthy of loving kindness and compassion, and how can we extend that also to the collective, to all of those. That's that Aquarius energy. So we've been working with that in different ways for some time now. I don't think our work will be done just because the eclipses shift signs, but the focus of the eclipses and the nodal axis will shift this November into Cancer and Capricorn.
Okay, so just to make sure I'm totally understanding you, that our 18-month period, so this eclipse season will be the grand finale of the 18 months of the past, and we'll move into a new one that is in Cancer.
Cancer and Capricorn, yes, for the most part, because what is happening is with this first eclipse, the first new moon, the node is still in Leo, right? Like I mentioned, but the new moon, the sun and the moon are actually in Cancer. So we're kind of getting a little preview of the next eclipse cycle while the node still stays in the same nodal axis that we've been working on. So sometimes near the beginning and the end of eclipse season, there's a little bit of a crossover that happens like that, where you'll have an eclipse in a sign that is kind of, this is what's coming next. Yes. And same thing, the total lunar eclipse on January 20th of 2019 will be at the very, very, very beginning of Leo, like 0 degrees Leo in some odd minutes. So it'll be like a little dream, a little very. But for the most part, I would say, yes, this is very much closing a bigger story. I would say so.
It seems like it's like your favorite TV show, and you have episodes, and there's like a new season coming out in January. But in July, new moon, we get this like teeny tiny little side story that's going to make a whole lot more sense when the next season comes out. Kind of
I
like that.
love that. Yeah, that's great. That's a good analogy.
So this new moon that you're talking about that's in Cancer, it's a partial solar eclipse and it's a supermoon?
It is. And what makes it a supermoon is that the moon in her orbit at one point during that lunar cycle, that synodic month, she's closest to Earth, and at one point she's farthest away. And if when she is closest to Earth, there is a new or full moon within a certain amount of time, I can't think of the exact time, which is like 24 hours or less, but probably there's something even more precise than that, it's a supermoon, right? So the moon is going to be what's called perigee, really close to Earth as it's new, as the partial eclipse is happening. So that makes it a supermoon. It's a supercharged supermoon because even though it's only a partial eclipse, it's still an eclipse. And eclipses, they're different. They don't happen all the time. They happen twice, eclipse seasons twice a year. So it's an unusual time. It's not an everyday occurrence.
What does synodic mean?
Synodic is the relationship of, it's like a synodic cycle is the cycle a planet moves around the sun, like that relationship between the sun and the planet and kind of how we see the planet from Earth be like, where is the planet in which sky? Like right now, Venus is in the night sky because that's where, and then at some point she's going to disappear and then she's going to move into the morning sky. So there's this cycle of orbits and yeah.
Wow, that's very technical.
Okay. It's very technical. I could be completely lying because I'm not an astronomer. So if you're an astronomer and I'm wrong, I'm sorry. I'm doing my best.
So what's the theme of new moon in Cancer?
New moon in Cancer, emotional connection, foundation, new foundations. Cancer is the sign of home and family and foundations and roots and security, really, and the need to be loved and nurtured. So that's a big theme for the new moon. There's a very strong opposition, which means 180 degrees, like right across the playing field of the zodiac is Pluto in Capricorn, opposing the new moon. So there's a lot of potential catharsis kind of energy. Maybe Pluto sometimes feels like a healing crisis for some people. So, but I would say emotional depth really, it's like, it's a preview of the next eclipse cycle. So there's something that I feel like we can kind of plan an intention for a larger blossoming, not like over the lunar cycle, but over a larger cycle of time and around home and belonging and security and emotional fluency. When you asked me what I meant by that when we were talking beforehand, but really being able to surf the emotional waves without getting stuck in them and being able to help other people as well when they're getting stuck, right? It's really important.
And are there any other planetary influences you wanted to talk about? I know you talked about a couple of trines and asteroids, and is that something we should bring into the mix?
Sure. The new moon and the sun are making a trine, a triangle of energy. It's a loose trine, but it's nice flow with Jupiter in Scorpio and Neptune in Pisces. So there just is this way that if you're feeling stuck, I want to look at getting things flowing and moving, and especially in the realm of emotions and feelings and making sure that you're nurturing yourself in balance with nurturing others. There's something about that, making sure your needs are getting met, not ignoring other people's needs, but that balance of your responsibilities and your responsibility to your family and to your work and to society at large, that is really going to be highlighted. And the water energy can help us flow, help us move our emotions rather than getting stuck in them. And we also have a really nice connection of energy in earth signs as well, with Saturn in Capricorn, really inviting us to build new structures, lay foundation for the new ideas, right? Really bring them into form. Uranus and Juno in Taurus. And then Venus has moved into Virgo, and she makes a conjunction with this asteroid Ceres, which again is another very feminine, nurturing energy. So take care of yourselves, ground. It's very feminine new moon, actually, that all that water and all that earth energy. It's very receptive time. Be open to new ideas around home and nurturing and emotional connection.
Yeah, and before we jumped on, we were talking about rituals, and we mentioned for new moon, we could do something as simple as a bullet journal entry, in your phone, on a piece of paper in your journal. And some of the questions we talked about were to ask yourself, are you ignoring yourself and taking care of everyone else? Or are you overindulging and caring for yourself and not tending to others? What are your personal family obligations, your professional obligations? And what seeds can you plant to take action toward what you want to create in those areas?
Yeah. I think the Pluto opposition is going to bring things out of the shadows. And so you'll get really clear and aware of the things that really don't nurture and support you, and how to kind of move away from those things and move toward the things and the actions and the people and the places that do nurture and support you. Really finding home. Cancer is such a sign of the home. And, home is wherever you are, because you carry home within you, but also as community, we make community with people, and you want to be with people who you feel comfortable with. Eclipse season's sometimes a little bit of a rough ride for folks. So make sure that you're taking care of yourselves and you're surrounding yourselves as much as possible with people who you feel comfortable and you can be yourself and you feel supported and held. Stay away from the drama. Just telling you now, just stay away. Don't go there. Don't do it.
As we move closer to the drama with the first quarter moon.
I know. First quarter moon, the halfway point between the lunations, right? Always between new and full moon, but this time, halfway point between eclipses. So sometimes I think about the time between eclipses. When eclipse begins, it's like you go into a tunnel and you pop out the other end. But with 3 eclipses, we're going to kind of go into a tunnel and maybe pop out for a minute and then like hop back in the tunnel. I mean, who knows? But you're in it's kind of squeezing. Time is squeezing. Energy is squeezing. And with the first quarter moon in Libra, and that's on the 19th. What day did we say that was, Katie? Did you write it down?
Thursday.
Thursday. Okay. Something really cool about the both quarter moons, this lunar cycle, is they're both in signs that are ruled by Venus. So this Venus energy is really going to remind us to look for where we are connected, look for where there is harmony, where there is beauty, where there is love, which I think is really nice. But with Libra, I mean, this is a great time to be a team player. Like, try to find, this is like the diplomat, Venus as a diplomat, and really trying to create some harmony you could be that like shining light, or that harmony, that energy of harmony and love that comes into and like transforms a space, because you just hold that vibration with you. And that is really powerful. So anybody if there's anyone out there that can do that, please do. You're going to help yourself and you're going to help everyone around you by tuning into that.
Yeah, you had said because the first quarter moon is in Libra, it's sort of like, and we're almost to the full moon where people are going to start to act weird and strange and wacky and like stuck in the birth canal, that there could be an opportunity to just look at, what did we say? Be a diplomat, not a doormat.
Oh, that was you. I love that. Yeah. Be a diplomat, not a doormat. So it's not about laying down and bowing down and like making sure that somebody's feathers don't get ruffled. It's not that, but it's if there is a conflict or if there is a situation that can be dealt with diplomatically rather than, what do you call that other thing? Fighting. But there's another word for it. Aggressively, rather than getting into contention. Can we try to facilitate it?
Civility.
Yeah. Well, yes.
Like, be civil, be, ruffle feathers, sure, but have a conversation. Like, don't have a boxing match or a screaming fight.
Yes, like
discussion. It's being open to other sides of the story and open to other points of view, right?
And yes, and you know what, everyone? It's okay to agree to disagree, right? We don't have to win every fight. And I just hear some sad stories about people separating from friendships and families because of like political disagreements. And I get it. And it's still heartbreaking because
I don't
you don't get it. I get it,
at all.
but because whatever, but we won't go down that path. But in any event, like, there is a way to disagree that doesn't have to be loud and aggressive and intense. Like there is a way. That's what diplomats do, right? They go into situations where there's people that are countries that are in, have different needs, and they try to help everybody's needs get met.
I think focusing on where we are aligned and where we're connected and the deeper like value systems at play is going to help a lot.
Absolutely. And Libra is very much connected to art and beauty and grace. So it's like more about moving with grace rather than, towing the line or, not speaking out. You can speak out and you can speak about things that are hard and difficult to speak about, but you can do it from a place with grace, even if you get intense and passionate there, it doesn't have to be. The word is like, it's on the tip of my tongue and I can't even think about it.
Yeah, it's like beautiful and strong and empowered and connected and said with love.
Not adversarial. Yes, that was the word that keeps like, because chances are you're probably going to disagree with people in your life, not just about the big things, but even about the little things. Like, I like the towels folded this way. No, I like them stacked like this. No, why won't you clean the coffee grounds out of the coffee grinder after you grind your coffee? Like, that could turn into a war in your house, or it could just be like, maybe you just wipe them out yourself. Okay, I'm talking about my life now. Guess who wants the coffee grounds wiped out? Me. Anyway.
That's the right thing to do.
Thank you. Please. Okay. So yeah.
Or you could, thinking of the ritual we thought up for this month, you could just go to a coffee shop and get a really nice cappuccino with oat milk, because it's time to take a little luxury, right? We talked about
luxury.
Dancing in the sculpture garden, buying yourself fresh flowers and bringing them into your home, wearing your favorite color lipstick. I never wear lipstick, so maybe it's a good time to wear lipstick. Go to a play, a concert, music.
Culture, for sure. Definitely culture.
That makes you feel beautiful, or that life is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to stay in adversarial mode when you look around and you're like, my God, this is so beautiful, right?
Right. 100%.
That other stuff is boring. This is just beautiful.
Yeah. It actually is willful to stay in adversary. It's like a willful kind of stubborn attachment. And it's very short-sighted because there is so much more.
So it's like, can we, during this first quarter moon, it's like, can we seduce ourselves and others to come back into our centering with beauty and artistic grace?
Right. Because the temperature is rising. That's the truth. And it will potentially be a challenge to do that. And that will be something to take with you as we approach the next lunation, is to remember to keep coming back to center. When things seem to be extreme, how do you come back to center in an extreme time, in extreme situations? How can you maintain that within yourself? What do you do? What are the practices you do and have in your life to help you stay aligned with your own center? Really important all the time. Very important during eclipse season and approaching the scary eclipse. Ooh.
But you would probably say like full moon on the July 27th is like one of the most intense days of the year.
It's a pretty powerful one. But let me just back up, because we have a couple of things happening before we get to the drama, and meaning just a couple of planetary changes. The sun, the sun's not a planet, but okay. The sun is moving into Leo. We're going from Cancer season to Leo season. That happens on Sunday, the 22nd. So there is just that double emphasis on that axis we're talking about with the eclipses, as the sun, the center of our solar system, moves into Leo. And then also around that time, there's going to start to be some kerfuffles in all of the things, the technology, the traffic, the yada yada, because Mercury is stationing retrograde on the 25th. Some folks will be on the 26th, depending on the time zone. So 25th, 26th, Mercury is making its second retrograde of the year. Okay. Remember back in earlier this year when Mercury was retrograde in Aries for like 2 months? Well, not retrograde for 2 months, but in Aries for 2 months because of the retrograde. Now it's going to happen in Leo. So right before we get to one of the most intense lunations of the year, Mercury goes retrograde. Just adding a little, let's just pretend, or let's not pretend, let's remember that Mercury is a trickster, right? And so Mercury is like that wacky Zen teacher that might just smack you upside the head with a stick to help you wake up kind of thing, right? So there's a little bit of confusion, and already with the Mars retrograde, there's already a little bit of like the energy may not be flowing as smoothly and easily as you're used to it. So we got this double down energy on retrogrades of personal planets right before we step into this total lunar eclipse on the 27th of July.
All right. So I'm gonna choose to think of Mercury retrograde as, as long as you don't go out and do all the things that you're not supposed to do, like buy electronics, it's like a retreat. It's like a slow down and rest and take it easy, because you're going to start firewalking.
That's right. Because the full moon, as I mentioned, it's a total lunar eclipse. Now it's happening, the full moon is exact at 1:20 p.m. Pacific time. So we're not going to see this eclipse in the States. It's just because it's not because of that it's not a longitude latitude thing. It's is the sky dark? Is it nighttime thing with lunar eclipses? It's not nighttime when this eclipse happens, so we won't see it. But other parts of the world, namely South America, Europe, Africa, Asia, and Australia, they're going to be seeing this total. It's going to be a full-on blood red kind of situation, just like that total lunar eclipse earlier this year. So very powerful lunation in and of itself, okay? And then we have the extra added feature of Mars being conjunct the moon during this lunar eclipse. One thing I want to say about Mars right now, and this is not about the astrology, this is about the astronomy. Mars, in its retrograde cycle, it gets very, very close to Earth. That's what happens. And right now, if you're looking at Mars in the sky, which is a late night, early morning kind of thing, Mars is really, really, really big and bright. Mars is so close to Earth, the closest it's been since 2003. So Mars being with the moon on the eclipse, it's like that Mars energy is doubly active. And simultaneously, the planet itself is like so close to Earth and shining so bright, big, and red. So it's just that presence is very real. If it's not just an astrology thing, it's actually an astronomy thing as well, which is kind of cool. So
you called it, when Mars is that close, you called it like a full moon eclipse on steroids.
Well, the lunar eclipse is a full moon on steroids, but then since Mars is there, it's definitely extra steroidal. Is that a word?
It's like the bodybuilders that they're
the veins. It's very veiny. So this is the truth. Mars is heating. The south node itself, which is where this eclipse is happening, kind of has a heating quality to it. Full moons in the lunar cycle, they're kind of the brightest time, right? So it's kind of hot and bright, and that energy is just magnified, very strong. And so this is really an eclipse about clearing up unfinished business and really like breaking away from the things that keep you separate, right? Aquarius energy, one of the kind of shadow sides of that can be a little isolationist, because a lot of times Aquarius energy is so innovative and so unusual that it's a little outside of societal norms. And so that can be a lonely place to be, and it can end up being a place where you feel very isolated in your life, the place that you're different from the people around you. Like I was born in a family where I'm different than everybody, and I felt very separate and alone much of my youth, especially like until I started to find like my whatever, your soul family and all that stuff. Use language, it's too woo-woo, but we are talking about astrology, so I guess we can go there. So really like an Aquarius, again, we're on that axis we were speaking about the heart and the mind, and any old ideas about that are just like, you know, old stories about yourself or about being separate or any ways where we're not belonging, and ideas about that, about being, you know, alienated and alone. Like it's just time to really examine them and just know that they're probably not true. First of all, for most of us, we probably have people in our lives. And what about letting go of that? And what about, you know, using the Mercury retrograde to write a new narrative for yourself, right? That's heart-based. And
yeah, we we were talking about calling this like the fire walking moon, because if you think like if there's a, you know, pathway with hot coals and you're gonna run across that with your bare feet, there's a certain kind of tenacity, a certain kind of mental focus, like you're right in the center of your body. There's no distractions from the outside. You just like pull it all in and
you do it,
right?
It's I love that. I think that's such an apt metaphor. Also, at this full moon, it's not just the sun and the moon are opposite one another. It's not just an eclipse. It's not just that Mars is involved. They're also making a hard square, which is a challenging angle to Uranus and Taurus, right? And there is that we talked about the Uranus and Taurus and that kind of waking up and that, you know, that unexpected, the change. And
so for more info for folks in their own personal natal charts.
Oh, where to look?
They would look at where Taurus hits their chart, right?
Yeah. So you want to look at the Leo, Taurus, and Aquarius early, you know, up to like 5 degrees. First 5, 6. I mean, you could move it into 10 if you've got like a sun or a moon there or something like that. And also look over at Scorpio. So all the fixed signs, early fixed signs, are all kind of getting a hard hit with this lunation for sure. Definitely.
Okay, so for rituals, as you're hopping on the
cold showers.
Yeah, cold showers. We talked about what do you do to cool down, both temperature-wise, because it's hot and it's summery, and like, geez, it's gonna be tomorrow 115 degrees here in Phoenix.
Oh my God.
So not just, you know, temperature, but also mood and how do you release energy. If it's walk away, wait and do nothing, jump in a cold lake, in a pool, eat watermelon, go dancing.
Spray rose water on your face.
Move. Spray
spritz
on your face.
Yeah.
And like, what are those things that allow you to process the intensity of energy? Because we may experience them as emotions like anger or frustration. But if we think of it in terms of just like intensity of energy that's moving through our systems, how do we process that in a way that's really constructive? So it could be, you know, like dancing, for example, or it could be making art, or it could be walking in nature. So it's like, what is that thing that you do to help you process intensity of energy and cool yourself down a little, right? Would you say that, Kristina?
Yes, absolutely. And I just also think that it's likely that other people will be, you know, it's like dodging bullets too, you know, and don't get too caught up in other people's emotions. If you're at a place where you are able to work with all that energy and you're moving it through, and then somebody tries to pull you into their drama, or even like you get distracted by the news, that drama, like really, it might be a difficult time. There might be a lot of extreme, a lot of revelations and kind of revolution, and very brash, loud, big, intense. And so everything that Katie is saying is like, and we go back to that first quarter Libra moon, right? Like, how can you come back to center? Like, do the things to support you to have the energy move through, and then try to come back to center. Because this is a full moon that, I mean, full moons by nature, they're opposition. So there is a tug of war or a seesaw kind of situation going on. And it's so easy to be pulled to one side, right? Or to go instead of standing in the middle. And that's going to be more of service to you and to the planet, the more people that can stay aligned to their center in whatever way they need to do it. That makes sense.
I just keep thinking, yeah, totally. I mean, I just keep thinking of like when we kind of glossed over that little thing earlier in the conversation of like we're not going to talk about politics, but, families breaking up and me saying, I don't understand it. And you saying you understand it. And like, I understand how people can feel very at odds. But I think not just with politics, but also just in terms of like having a really crazy full moon and having the intensity of energy. And, it's, whether it's like culturally in our society or just in our own homes, in our kitchens, when like you meet the people in your own home and there's intensity of energy, it feels very helpful to, if you can, like sort of get the bird's eye view and remember, like in your example, like, and we're family, right? It's sort of like, I like to think of it as like, I lived in Europe for a lot of years when I was a teenager. And I always thought it was fascinating that in Europe, we'll just use politics as an example because it's a hot topic. In Europe, oh my God, my friends would just like dialogue it out and argue it out, not in a like a vicious, ferocious way, but they would just like duke it out, right? And then they'd like have a beer and like hug and be like best friends. And I think that that's a really, they weren't afraid to say things. They weren't afraid, they didn't have to be PC. It was just like, this is my view, but what about that? But what about this? But then in the end, it was like, but we're still best friends. And so I think that, whether it's politics or whether it's these like hot under the collar, crazy full moon energies, it may help to just get some perspective and say like, and what do we have in common? And what is the most important like foundation that we can stand on? It's our love for each other. It's our interconnectedness. It's our, like our human love for each other, our humanity, the things that we have in common, the happiness that we all want, the good qualities about each other, right? Because it's so easy, like, man, those coffee grounds are stuck in that coffee maker. Like, seriously, again.
What's wrong with you? Don't you know the right way to do it? I love what you said because you said a few phrases that are so right on just astrologically. Bird's eye view, Aquarius, right? That's the high, that really is that like bigger picture. Beautiful. And also when you said, don't be afraid to say things like this, for those of you who are afraid to say things, this can be a full moon that helps you speak your truth. It might embolden you. Is that a word, embolden?
Oh, I love that word. Yes.
Okay. To speak up for yourself or for others. And that's really important to be able to do that. And I love the story that you told about being able to argue and to have different opinions, but to still find fraternity, right? Like that, not like frat boys, that's not what I mean, but like that word of like language is so limiting, people. My goodness. Can't we just all like think some images to each other and communicate in a new way? I like to listen to birdsong and watch the stars dance myself, but that's just me. So yeah, really beautiful bird's eye view. Where are we connected? Because that's Aquarian energy as well. I mean, we're in the age of Aquarius. That's the age we're moving into. It is about the collective, and it's a very humanitarian energy. And it's very much like everybody is a part of this. Every individual is a part of this story on planet Earth at this time.
Right.
It's like if the Earth is a body and we're all cells, right? And we're different organ systems and all of that. I mean, it's a pretty, yeah. Go ahead.
I love where you're going with it. And I think that even those we consider adversarial, whether it's in our own homes or in our jobs or on the news or like whatever we find on the road rage, whatever we find as adversarial, that's also showing us something about ourselves, and we're learning from those experiences. So it's a part of a greater picture that's actually serving us, and that we've called it into being, right?
Yeah, we all have the capacity for, as humans, we're all different. We're all wired differently. We all have different experiences. But as humans, there's a vast capacity of behavior that shows up. And any of us can act in a very small way what someone we might describe as a bad person does in a big way in our own lives. Like we can exhibit that same behavior in a very minute way. And so it's really important to just, continue. I mean, use this energy also of this full moon and this cutting away of your own bad behaviors of ways that you're tyrannical in your life, okay, in the kitchen with the coffee grinder or whatever, like the little things, because quite frankly, it's the little things that make up most of our lives, right? That's where we live our lives, is in the daily moments. And so, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, totally. And to love those parts, like love those parts of ourselves. Like if I see my tyrannical nature like popping up like a tarantula,
Tyrannical tarantula.
to love that part, and just sort of like rest it in the space of the sky. It's like actually we're as big as the sky, but I can still see that little tyranny and
yes,
love and accept it into the sky too.
I don't love all, but everybody. I'm just going to take. I'm just going to confess, I don't, and I have a really hard time with certain individuals on the planet at this time, and that's the truth. And I have a hard time with parts of myself that I don't love, and that's true too. So it's a very complex time. It's a very complex, many layered, and it's a lot of inequality on the planet, and so. There's reasons to be upset. I get it. And this full moon is just going to really bring everything into it's very illuminated. Full moons are very illuminated, but also with an eclipse, the moon moves into the shadow of the earth and turns a different color, right? There is this hidden and revealing. This is very eclipse energy. It's very much about what's in the shadows, what's being revealed, what's being hidden. And so on the world stage, within your own sphere, in your own family, and it's not just one place. Don't get fixated.
Okay, so let's just flip this on its head a little bit, because probably a lot of astrologers are going to be like,
oh, everybody's talking like that. Yes.
Eclipse. Oh my God, it's going to be like, and I remember that eclipse last August of last year was no joke.
No joke. Neither was the lunar eclipse this year, if you'll remember it. It was no joke either, in a different way, the total lunar eclipse.
So if we flip this on its head and we say, once having moved through the eclipse season, what will be available to us? What kind of, can you give some insight into, sweeps the drama and the intensity and the heat aside, once having moved through this, like once we did the fire walk, we get to the other end of the hot coals, and what's available to us?
More strength. But I would say, use the heat for transformation. It's like that tapas energy. It's not about just burning something, but use that heat for the inner purification. That's what I like to do if I'm working with the energy in a way that's not destructive. It's more constructive.
Once having purified, what is available to us?
New ideas, new ways of being. Here's something also that I've been thinking about and talking to some folks about a lot lately, is that it's kind of hard to create new things when there's no template for it. It's almost like language, we need to make new language. And so we will have the capacity to vision and live into things that we don't even understand right now, if we can work with this energy and work through it and dismantle our own tyranny on the inner terrain and how that spills over into our life. Then if we can do that, then the possibilities for creating something new that holds all of humanity in equal value, right, with that Aquarian energy, we can create that together. And we don't know what that means because it's not ever been done. But we can create the space to have the tenacity and the strength, and that we've walked through the fire and we're stronger. It's like forging metal, right? In fire. You create jewelry and things like that by using heat, or a diamond from coal. That pressure and that heat creates clarity. Right? There's that. So I would say that's the potential, and that's what we have available to us. But it means being aware and working with things, not spiritual bypassing things away, not ignoring them, but actually showing up and getting in the trenches of your own shadow. This is full moons or big time shadow work. This is a major shadow work, full moon eclipse.
Yay.
Really
So
big.
once on the other side of that.
She's like, let me get away from this freaking moon, Kristina. And Kristina, you'll see I'm a very platonic person. I'm like, shadow.
No, I mean, I love it, actually. I love it. It's like saying to somebody, you should meditate. Well, it's kind of also important to know, like, well, why should I meditate?
Okay, well,
what's the benefit? So
right.
Just living through this experience and kind of being excited to move through this. Why? Because we'll be able to open up to a whole new reality that we didn't even know was possible, right?
Sure. And even like when I'm looking at this chart and like, so I'm talking about the full moon and I'm looking at the moon and I see Mars in the south node. If I look away from it, I see the sun in Leo on the north node and I see, oh, living from the heart. Oh, value systems that are heart oriented. And that's where we're leading from. That's where we're creating from, right? Not out of ego and inflated ego, not the shadow side of Leo energy, but the like, oh yeah, every unique individual matters, like that new perspective and really that heart. But and then the next new moon, we're not going to talk about it right now, but the third eclipse in this trinity is the new moon in Leo that begins the next lunar cycle. And so here we are in that, like, you know, heart space again, and with the sun and the moon in Leo. And it's a very the potential for love.
Loverly.
And
it's very
loverly. It's loverly, really. It's never all one thing. It's always all things.
Okay, so once having passed out.
Have I even answered your question?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good.
So I'm just visualizing we've passed through that birth canal. We've gotten to a whole new reality, and now it's last quarter moon. This is
in Taurus on the 4th of August, which is a Saturday. As I think I mentioned earlier, I think it's so beautiful that the quarter moons are both in signs ruled by Venus, because Venus is about connection. Venus is about love and beauty and the nice things, the attractive things, what, you know, all that stuff. And so this last quarter moon in Taurus, what I think is going to be really important for people is to remember that they have bodies. Because a lot of folks, especially the sensitive ones, especially people who are getting caught up, you know, you kind of get blown out by the energy and you have to like land in your body, all 5 senses. So do really nice things for your body, like drink water, eat good food, get a massage. You know, if you want to go lay on the earth, that would be really rejuvenative. That feels so good to lay on the earth. It feels so good to lay. It's like amazing, right? Yeah, just take really good care of yourself, of your body. That's really important always, but especially as you're kind of integrating all. I mean, if you just walked over the coals, you know, you want to maybe rest and take care of yourself and maybe hydrate after that. So just remembering and tending to that. And yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And then you had mentioned before that there might be a Shazam Wisdom Insight Day, the Kazemi.
Well, before that, Venus is going to change signs for those of you who pay attention to these things. On the 6th, she's moving into Libra, which is one of her castles. She has a castle in Taurus and a castle in Libra. So this is a really good time to, we were talking before about like Venus wants to have a salon and have really interesting conversations and see interesting art. And then on the 7th, Uranus stations retrograde. So the retrograde planets are a reflection time. So, you know, we're going to be doing a little reflections and reflecting in the Uranian area of our life, that Taurus house. And then the wisdom insight Kazemi is during Mercury retrograde. Mercury makes a conjunction with the sun, and that exact conjunction is called a Kazemi, and it's happening on August 8th. And in Leo. And so I think there's going to be like the potential for like a nice download of heart wisdom on that day.
I love that word, Kazemi.
I do too. Isn't it so much fun to say?
Yeah.
Anything with a Z. Z's are fun. They're zippy. They're zesty. They're sensational.
That is
Z real sing. Z real zing. They're zingy. They're zany. Maybe too much caffeine.
Woo! Okay, so we made it through the lunar cycle, and
Yay.
we made it through the eclipse. Well,
mostly. You're mostly through eclipse season. The hardest part of eclipse season is behind you by the end of the lunar cycle.
And we should say that because this podcast episode's on July 11th, there still will be time to join the Flower Revolution. Why that's important is because the flower essences are tremendous supports for like helping us get a jump on getting our, how should we say, getting our bodies and systems and energetic systems actually ready for stabilization. It's almost like, I know this sounds so new agey, but like getting an energetic download from flowers, from the earth, so that we're prepared to sort of anchor in an experience for ourselves and have it, take the edge off a little bit and have the insights a little more readily available to us without getting us caught up in all the intensity, shall we say.
I love that you said that the flowers are from the earth. And so that's that wisdom and that support from the earth, because all of these astrological things we're talking about and these eclipses, they're happening to the earth. They're very earth specific eclipses, not happening on Mars or Venus. I mean, I don't know if they have eclipses up there or not, but these are not. This is very specific to earth. So earth holds the healing and the key to using the energies and having being able to use them for transformation rather than being like blown out. So that's so great. I love it. I love it. It's brilliant. Flower evolutionary. That's me.
We're actually working with a flower that, so in this month of July, that comes from an area of the world where the eclipse will, well, it's more in the direction of where it'll be able to be seen closer to Australia. And we're working with the pink torch ginger flower collected in Singapore, actually. And so if anybody out there is interested in terms of joining, it is a 6-month program and you can join anytime. If you join by the 15th of July, you would start with Pink Torch. Let me tell you why Pink Torch is really special, and just from my own personal experience, because it helps us get through times of sacred sting. Like when a certain situation in life happens to us, or apparently happens today externally, to sort of like pull up some old wound of the heart. So it really actually isn't about today. It's about this older thing that happened a long time ago. So it triggers us, and it's could be triggers around separation and loneliness versus self-compassion and interconnectedness. But here's the really cool thing about this flower, and I don't know if have you been taking it?
I have it right here.
So what's really interesting to me is when I'm taking it, I actually feel a physical sensation in the frontal part of my body that feels like I'm holding a container for my emotions. And in moments where I'm alone, so I'm like driving my car, or I just get like a moment of space, it's really hard to articulate in words, right? It's like that language problem, but it's this sensation that feels like my capacity to digest things or alchemize things in my system is at a greater capacity than it was before. And even the subtle things, like we may think like, I'm fine, right? We're just cruising along, but actually like there's something super duper subtle that's running in the background. And so that container sort of like balloons out, and we're able to process and digest it inside that container. I know this is probably sounding really out there to people, but
I bet it's not. I bet some people completely understand what you're saying, because I get it. It makes sense.
It's like the kitchen. I keep going back to this, but it's like the intense kitchen moment with the grounds in the coffee maker. And you're just like, I've seen this one too many times and I'm just going to blow my lid. It's like, oh, you, instead of like being pulled outside of yourself into an extreme, you just sort of digest all of that in this container.
Excellent. Because We need to be able to digest all experiences in life. You can't, right? I mean, if you're not digesting all of your experiences, then you're just not, you're stuck, right? And some things are getting stuck in you. And when you talk about the sacred sting, I mean, it reminds me of like when you were talking and I was thinking about that kitchen moment, and I'm like, oh, what's the thing I don't do? I never hang up the toilet paper on the toilet. And that annoys the other person, and it's like that sting of like, for me also like, oh, I do this in my own way. Right. Like, and so it's like a moment of an aha, and it's like all of a sudden it's an equal playing field, and there's no victim, there's no oppressor. I don't know if that's helpful or makes sense, but that was I was playing out in my mind when you were talking. I was like, oh yeah, it's like a sting that it's like annoying, but it's like it's liberation if you can recognize that there's some truth there, or an awareness that when you get that bird's eye view of the situation, you're not like in the kitchen, but you're like, oh, wait a minute. Then for me,
right.
that's what's happening for me with this elixir, things like
right.
that.
Right. And it's probably the coffee grounds have nothing to do with the coffee grounds. It's like, why doesn't this person respect that another person is coming after?
Yeah.
Or, for example, something happens on the full moon eclipse day that's really intense. And then we can look at that and say, it's actually not about that. It's not about this thing that happened on that thing.
Yes.
That thing is like a fish hook that just like swallows right down into our mouth, into our guts, and like pulls that out, back up and out our mouth. So as I know that's really graphic, but as the fish hook is climbing down into our belly and then being pulled back up through and out our mouths, it's like we're feeling that of the hook coming back up. But the good news is it's coming up to come out, and that's it. Bye-bye. So it's like understanding the beauty of something that triggers you so deeply is that you're, like you said, you're actually purifying it.
And it really, like you said, it's really not about that thing. It's about something else. It's a trigger to a deeper, older wound that has nothing to do with the coffee grounds at all. Yes.
Totally. And whatever is making you feel, whatever the adversarial component is of whatever I'm feeling, it is actually not that. The external thing isn't the enemy. It's whatever that previous experience was inside of me that is, so it's all about like turning inward and being with yourself and gaining those insights about yourself versus duality, right? Like me against you against.
Well, I mean, the label's so beautiful because the flower is just stunning, first of all, but I love the words on the label. It says wholeness, interconnectedness, healing old wounds. I mean, I've dug into Katie extensively, like, how do you get these sequences? How do you match them up so perfectly with the energy? Like, how do you do it? Because I find I've been using the Flower Evolution Project products the whole time, and they're always lined up with what's happening. It's just kind of amazing. And this is such a good elixir for this eclipse season. If you can get your hands on it, I highly recommend you do.
And then after the 15th, we go into the Western Prairie Fringed Orchid, which is a really long name for one of the most endangered orchids in the United States. It is incredibly beautiful, and it was such a magical experience finding it. And it helps us tap into like electrical energetic systems or collectives or individuals or groups or places for really swift exchange of energy and understanding. So it's as if it enhances our capacity to communicate energetically without words, being able to have a more profound positive impact and understanding because there's this deeper level of communication occurring energetically without words, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. It made me think about heart communication, electromagnetic frequencies from the heart, and how they're actually stronger than the electromagnetic frequencies from the brain. And so like, it was like a felt thing for me. I was like, oh, this elixir is going to help me speak that language better, right? That heart language, and which doesn't have to have words. It's a feeling, it's a felt thing. And it's that, yeah, that's beautiful. Oh, I'm excited for that one.
Love it. And then if you're, not joining the Flower Revolution, there is the blend that we just came out with that is super helpful for right now called Game Changer. And it's a combination of flowers that brings in a sense of ease and effortlessness and expansive growth. And it's like done, easy, no problem, super lighthearted. Just a overall great support.
I'll take it. Let's take it. That sounds good. I'm so grateful to you, Katie, for creating these elixirs and hanging out with these plants and listening to them and bringing these gifts of the earth, this healing and the beauty and all the things that you do and all the different ways that they're delivered to the collective. Thank you so much for that. It's such important work.
It's so fun. And it's so fun to see them kind of cycle around and come out at exactly the right moment.
It's very cool. I love it.
So just to summarize, we were going to talk about the super down and dirty, quick bulleted themes for this lunar cycle that we just talked about.
Yes. So new beginnings, right? We've got this preview eclipse in Cancer. It's pretty new beginningsy, which entails endings, right? We have to let go of things in order to have the new beginnings and to vision the new beginnings. The fire walking theme, right? That's definitely, it might get a little hot and spicy. So walk in fire. And then emotional depths, real, especially with that new moon, with that Pluto opposition, and really getting more and more comfortable with your own emotional depths and being willing to be brave enough to tell the truth, even if it's scary or hard or feels like, you might get rejected. Like, I think that finding the community and the people that you can be emotionally true with and that you can feel held with and find those depths together is so important in life, and especially right now when the world seems very crazy and out of control. So be with those loved ones in whatever way you can.
Love that. And then when we meet up for the next lunar cycle, we'll be able to talk about the tail end of that eclipse season in August, right?
Yes, and I love it because, Leo is a lion and it has a tail, and the glyph for Leo looks a little bit like a lion's tail. So kind of. In my mind, as I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, there's the tail end. Yes, we will. We will talk about the tail end of these eclipses.
So enjoy your summer, enjoy cooling off, enjoy July, enjoy the sacred sting and all of the insights and wisdom that it brings you. Thank you again to the listeners for humoring both Kristina and I on our journey through the cosmic and flower tunnels.
The honeycombs.
Anything else you want to add, Kristina?
I don't think so. Just be well, my friends. Travel lightly,
Travel lightly. I love that.
Yeah.
Travel lightly. Thank you again for being with us on the Moonshine episode of the Flower Lounge, and we'll catch you next month for the next lunar cycle. Thanks, Kristina.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you so much for listening to the Flower Lounge. I'm Katie Hess, and we'll be releasing a new podcast every Wednesday. If you like what you heard, or you know someone who might be touched by our conversation, share it with them. And don't forget to subscribe. To find out what your favorite flowers mean about you, take the quiz at lotusway.com.